Before you run to the done for you authentication service, Auth0, Okta, whatever it is, it's important for you to understand how JSON Web Tokens register, log in, and give protected content to users when you're first building a full stack application. Here's a complete breakdown on how to make that possible using a simple server and a client-side React application. So what I've done here is create a simple server using Node.js. At the top, I import the libraries necessary for my server, bcrypt to hash passwords, JSON Web Tokens to handle the tokens back and forth from the client, express to make a simple server, body parser to actually parse the JSON and then actually communicate back and forth with the client, cores to handle network calls, and then Morgan to log different information back from my API. Then I set up my application. Then I establish the port that I'm going to be using to expose the application. Now, to imitate a database, what I've done is create an array called users. Normally, you would save this user information in a database, but for today's example, I'm going to show you how to do that just locally using an array. I've created the secret key. The secret key could be anything, something more substantial in the future, but it just establishes a way to use headers back and forth. Then I create the application, establish cores, and then I create 3 routes. Register to create a user and save it to that array. Login to then actually get the JSON Web Token and then to use the Web Token to then do calls back and forth from my API. And then a protected route. The protected route serves to give protected information to the client when the right user is logged in. So this simple server really illustrates how we can use web tokens to communicate back and forth with an API and establish authentication. This is my client. This is a basic React scaffold that I've put together to illustrate how to use the register, the login, and the protected routes on our backend. So what I'm doing here is I'm using Axios to call our backend to register a user. That's where the username and the password go back to our backend and establish the creation of a user into that array I was talking about. I've also created a login button to then use the same username and password to log into our service, get that JWT or JSON Web Token. And then here we use that token to get protected content from the user from our backend. This is just a simple login application I've put together using a component library called Chakra. And what this is going to illustrate is how we use JSON Web Tokens to authenticate users. So we're able to register them, log them in, and then get protected content. So this is what it looks like from the front end. It's a simple window to log a user in and register the username and password. So I'm going to register a user here. And I'm going to give it some random password. Once that user is registered, we're going to see that pop up. And we'll also see what it looks like on our backend. I can also log in with that same user information. And just to illustrate to you what is happening here, the token is being sent to our API, so when I ask for protected content, I also get some protected content. In this, I've just put a string called protected content. Finally, let's look at our backend. Here I want to highlight a couple of things. You'll notice that I'm creating a user, and that user has been created with an encrypted password, and it's been added to my users array. And then what I've done is when the login is initiated, the JSON Web Token is created, and then I'm able to give the protected content back to my user. So this was how to use JSON Web Tokens to establish basic auth. I think it's important to understand how to use this in the process before going to a do-it-for-you auth service like Auth0.